The Unwanted Princess. The crystalline palace of Velithora glittered under 3 moons, but Princess Naya felt only the cold weight of isolation. She moved through the coronation celebration like a ghost among the living, her silver gown trailing across floors that reflected her solitary figure. Courtiers parted before her, their painted faces polite, but their minds screamed with fear whenever she drew near. She couldn't help but hear them. Her telepathic abilities were both her birthright and her curse. Dangerous, their thoughts whispered. Too powerful. Unnatural. Naya's fingers tightened around her ceremonial goblet. 23 years of this, and still it cut like fresh wounds. Even tonight, when they should be celebrating her ascension, the nobles kept their distance, filling the ballroom with music and laughter that somehow excluded her completely. Your Highness. The voice came from behind, a voice that carried no fear, only curiosity. Naya turned to find a human watching her with open fascination rather than veiled terror. His dark hair was styled in Earth fashion, and his formal suit marked him as one of the diplomatic envoys sent to negotiate the new alliance. Marcus Chen, he introduced himself, bowing slightly. I hope I'm not intruding. Everyone intrudes on a princess, Naya replied, her tone sharper than intended. It's practically required. But Marcus smiled, unfazed. Then I'll do it more interestingly than most. Would you honor me with a dance? Before she could refuse, the orchestra began a traditional Velithoran waltz. Refusing would create a diplomatic incident. Naya placed her hand in his, immediately tensing as she prepared for the usual mental recoil when someone touched her. It didn't come. Instead, as they moved together across the floor, something unexpected happened. Where normally people's thoughts bombarded her like physical blows, Marcus's mind felt like warm sunlight, open, interested, completely unafraid. When his hand pressed against her back, guiding her through a turn, Naya's powers responded instinctively, reaching toward that warmth. Their eyes met, and suddenly the mental connection deepened. 4-3 heartbeats, she felt everything, his wonder at her world, his loneliness as a stranger so far from home, his genuine attraction to her despite every warning he'd received about the dangerous princess. Naya gasped, breaking contact. Around them, the court had stopped to stare. Forgive me, Marcus said quietly, though his eyes told a different story. But that was extraordinary. For the first time in years, Naya felt seen rather than feared. It terrified her. The truth beneath shadows. Seraphine's eyes opened to unfamiliar surroundings. The sterile smell of medical supplies mixed with something else, the scent of the man who had saved her. She sat up slowly, her body responding with strength that surprised even her. The wounds that should have taken weeks to heal had closed completely. Oren stood across the room, preparing something at a makeshift counter. He turned at the sound of her movement, his expression cautious but kind. You're awake. How do you feel? Alive. The word felt strange on her tongue. Because of you. Before he could respond, Seraphine moved with inhuman speed, pinning him against the wall. Her hand pressed against his throat, not crushing, but firm enough to communicate danger. Who sent you? What organization do you work for? Oren's eyes widened, but he didn't struggle. No one. I'm just a medic. I found you in the ruins, Anne. No one helps without reason, she hissed. Everyone wants something. I want you to live. His voice remained steady despite the fear she could smell on him. That's all. I took an oath. Seraphine searched his face, seeking deception. Centuries of betrayal had taught her to recognize lies, to anticipate hidden agendas. But this man's eyes held only genuine concern and, strangely, a gentleness she hadn't encountered in longer than she could remember. She released him and stepped back, suddenly aware of how vulnerable her suspicion made her appear. Forgive me. Trust is difficult. Oren rubbed his throat, though she'd left no mark. I understand. These are dangerous times. He gestured to a chair. Please, sit. You should rest more. Your injuries were extensive. Were, Seraphine repeated, settling into the chair with supernatural grace. You noticed, then, the healing. It's hard to miss. Oren pulled up another chair, maintaining a respectful distance. I've seen combat enhancements before, but nothing like this. What are you? The question hung between them. Seraphine considered lying. She'd perfected the art over centuries. But something about this man's honesty demanded the same in return, at least partially. Something old, she said finally. Something most people believe extinct, if they believe we existed at all. The coalition forces were searching the ruins, Oren said. Before the final transport left, their commander showed us a holo-image. They said they were hunting a war criminal. The image was corrupted, but... He paused. It looked like you. Seraphine's jaw tightened. I am no criminal. But yes, they hunt me. They have hunted my kind for 3 centuries, ever since the Purge Wars. Your kind. She stood and walked to the small window, gazing out at the devastated landscape. We were called many names across the millennia. Blood drinkers. Night walkers. Immortals. She turned to face him. Vampires, in the old earth tongues. Oren's breath caught, but he didn't flee. She watched emotions play across his face. Disbelief, fear, fascination. That's impossible. Vampires are myths. Stories to frighten children. All myths contain truth, Oren Vale. She smiled sadly. Your name was on your medical insignia. I needed to know who saved me. If you're really a vampire, why haven't you? He gestured vaguely. Killed you. Drained you. Seraphine moved closer, noting how his pulse quickened though he held his ground. Because you showed me kindness. Because you risked yourself for a stranger. Because... She hesitated, surprising herself. Because I'm tired of being a monster. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. How long? Oren asked quietly. How long have you been alone? 347 years since the last of my court fell. 500 since I've had a conversation that didn't end in violence or betrayal. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. I am Seraphine Rael, last of the Crimson Empresses. And I am so very tired. Oren stood slowly and, to her absolute shock, extended his hand. Then rest. Stay here while you recover. The coalition has moved on. They think everyone died in the bombardment. You're safe, at least for now. Seraphine stared at his offered hand, this simple gesture of trust from a man who should fear her. Slowly, she reached out and clasped it, feeling the warmth of his living flesh against her cold skin. Why? She whispered. Why help me when you know what I am? Oren's smile was gentle. Because beneath everything else, you're someone who's been hurt and alone for far too long. And everyone deserves a chance at redemption. For the first time in centuries, Seraphine felt something stir in her chest, something that might have been hope. Hunger and longing. 5 days passed in the shelter, and Seraphine felt her carefully maintained control beginning to crack. She'd gone longer without feeding, much longer, but her injuries and the accelerated healing had depleted her reserves. The hunger gnawed at her, a living thing coiled in her chest. Oren had been nothing but kind, sharing his rations, engaging her in conversations that reminded her of what it meant to be more than a predator. They talked of the stars, of lost colonies, of the lives they'd lived before war consumed everything. He told her about his family on the agricultural world of Tharos, destroyed in the early conflicts. She shared fragments of her past, carefully edited versions of courts long fallen and loves turned to dust. But the hunger complicated everything. She caught herself watching the pulse at his throat, the movement of blood beneath his skin. Her hearing had sharpened to the point where his heartbeat filled the shelter like a drum. When he moved close to check her temperature, still concerningly low, his scent overwhelmed her senses, copper and salt, life and warmth. You're not eating, Oren observed one evening as she pushed away another ration packet untouched. I can't, Seraphine admitted, her voice strained. This isn't suitable. Understanding dawned in his eyes. The blood. You need blood. She stood abruptly, putting distance between them. I can manage. I've endured worse. For how long? He followed her, his medical training overriding his self-preservation. "Seraphine, you're trembling. Your skin is even colder than before. This is killing you. Better that than the alternative." She pressed her back against the wall, as far from him as the small space allowed. "I won't become the monster they believe I am. Not with you." Oren was quiet for a long moment. Then, deliberately, he rolled up his sleeve. "Take what you need." "No." The word came out as a growl, her fangs extending involuntarily. "You don't understand what you're offering. I understand you saved countless lives as an empress before the wars. I understand you've been starving yourself rather than harm me. I understand that I trust you." He moved closer, offering his wrist. "Please. Let me help you the way you once helped others." "Oren. I'm a medic. I know my limits. I know how much I can safely give." His eyes met hers steadily. "And I know you won't hurt me." The hunger roared through her, but something else stirred beneath it, something more dangerous than bloodlust. His trust, his willingness to make himself vulnerable, touched a part of her she'd thought dead. "If I do this," she whispered, "there will be a connection. A bond. You'll feel what I feel. It's intimate." "I know." His hand remained steady, his pulse strong and sure. "I'm willing." Seraphine moved forward slowly, giving him every opportunity to change his mind. When he didn't, she took his wrist gently, cradling it like something precious. Her fangs pierced his skin with practiced precision, painful for only a moment, then replaced by something else entirely. The first taste of his blood exploded across her senses. It was nothing like the desperate feeding of survival. This was sharing, offering, trust made manifest. Through the connection, she felt his emotions. Concern for her well-being, genuine affection, and underneath it all, an attraction he'd been carefully suppressing. She felt him gasp as the bond formed, allowing him to sense her in return. The crushing loneliness of centuries, the grief of lost love, the fear of never being anything more than a monster, all of it flowed between them. And beneath everything, her growing feelings for him, this mortal who'd shown her kindness when the galaxy offered only hate. Seraphine forced herself to stop, though her body screamed for more. She sealed the wound with her tongue, a property of her saliva that left barely a mark. Oren swayed slightly, and she caught him, guiding him to sit. "That was..." He touched his wrist, wonder in his eyes. "I felt everything. Seraphine, you're not a monster. You're just someone who's been hurt so deeply that you forgot how to hope." She knelt before him, her hand covering his. "And you're a fool who risks everything for someone he barely knows." "Maybe." He smiled, reaching up to brush a strand of dark hair from her face. "But I don't regret it. Any of it." The moment stretched between them, charged with newfound connection and possibilities neither had anticipated. Seraphine leaned forward, and Oren met her halfway, their lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of blood and promise, danger and salvation intertwined. When they finally parted, both breathless, Seraphine whispered against his mouth, "We can't. This is impossible." "Everything worth having is impossible," Oren replied, pulling her closer. "Let's be impossible together." Midnight Encounter Damien spent the evening in his quarters, the transfer orders lying unsigned on his desk like an accusation. Every rational part of his mind screamed that he should sign them, pack his belongings, and disappear before dawn. He was a diplomat, trained to prioritize the greater good over personal desire. Thousands of lives depended on the alliance Serena's marriage would secure. But his heart remembered the way she'd smiled in the garden. The sound of her laughter in the archives. The electric moment when their hands had touched beneath the star charts at a quarter to midnight. He found himself walking the eastern corridors, his footsteps silent on the polished floors. The guards were indeed absent, as Mirel had suggested. Whether this was a test or a gift, he couldn't say. The gardens were bathed in the soft glow of twin moons rising over Azuratha's eternal horizon. Bioluminescent flowers pulsed with gentle light, responding to the emotions of anyone nearby. As Damien entered the secluded grove where they'd first met, the flowers blazed brighter, reflecting his turbulent heart. She was already there. Serena stood beneath an archway of flowering vines, wearing a simple dress instead of her formal court attire. Her copper-toned skin seemed to glow in the moonlight, and her amber eyes found his immediately, as if she'd been waiting, hoping he would come. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I wasn't sure I should be." Damien stopped a few paces away, maintaining a distance that felt both respectful and agonizing. "Your mother spoke with me today." "I know." Serena wrapped her arms around herself. "She told me she was going to. I wanted to warn you, to spare you the burden of her questions, but—" She looked away, blinking back tears. "Part of me hoped she would ask. That someone would finally force us to be honest about what we both feel." The flowers around them brightened further, responding to the raw emotion between them. "Serena," Damien began, but she held up her hand. "Let me speak first, please. Before I lose my courage." She took a shaking breath. "I've known about my betrothal to Lord Varen since I was 21. I accepted it because I understood duty. I'm the heir to Azurath. My marriage isn't about love, it's about securing our people's future. I made peace with that." She finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes nearly broke him. "Then you arrived, with your thoughtful questions and your genuine interest in our poetry. You didn't see the sovereign's daughter, you saw me. You listened when I spoke about things that mattered to no one else. You made me laugh. You made me feel." Her voice cracked. "You made me feel like I was more than just a piece on a political game board." Damien closed the distance between them without thinking. "You are so much more than that." "Am I?" Serena's tears finally fell. "Because in 6 months, I'll belong to a man I don't love. I'll share his bed, bear his children, smile for the cameras, and pretend my heart isn't dying. And you'll be—" She choked on the words. "Where will you be, Damien?" "I have transfer orders. I'm supposed to leave tomorrow." The flowers around them dimmed suddenly, as if the garden itself mourned. "Then this is goodbye." Serena's voice was barely a whisper. "This is the last time we'll stand together like this. The last time I can be honest. The last time I can tell you that Damien couldn't bear it anymore." He closed the final distance between them and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. Don't say goodbye yet. What else is there to say?" But she leaned into his touch, her eyes closing as if memorizing the feel of his hands. "That I love you." The words tumbled out, 3 months of restraint finally breaking. "That every moment with you has been the most alive I've ever felt. That the thought of leaving makes me want to burn those transfer orders and damn the consequences." Her eyes opened, hope and heartbreak warring in their amber depths. "But you can't. We can't. The alliance, I know." He rested his forehead against hers, breathing in the scent of moonflowers in her hair. "I know all the reasons this is impossible. But right now, in this moment, can we stop being the diplomat and the princess? Can we just be Damien and Serena?" She answered by rising onto her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was everything Damien had imagined and nothing he could have prepared for. Soft and desperate, tender and fierce, it tasted of tears and forbidden longing. Serena's arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer, as if proximity could somehow make the impossible possible. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the garden blazed around them, the flowers responding to the intensity of their connection with brilliant, cascading light. "I've dreamed of this," Serena whispered against his lips. "Every night since we met." Damien kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth. "I love you. Whatever happens, whatever choices we have to make, I need you to know that what I feel for you is real." She pulled him down for another kiss, deeper this time, her fingers threading through his hair. They sank onto the stone bench where they'd first talked, unable to keep any distance between them now that the walls had finally fallen. "Stay tonight," she breathed between kisses. "Just tonight. Tomorrow we can face reality. But tonight, let me pretend you're mine." They held each other as the twin moons arced across the sky, sharing whispered confessions and stolen kisses, knowing they were being reckless, knowing there would be consequences, but unable to deny themselves this one perfect night. Storm began to touch the horizon, Serena pulled back slightly, her hand resting over his heart. "I need to tell you something. Something even my mother doesn't know." "What is it?" "Lord Varen. I've met him 3 times for formal discussions. He's not what he seems." Her voice dropped lower. "I've overheard things, Damien. Communications he didn't know I could access. He's planning something that could destroy my mother's reign." Before Damien could respond, a distant bell chimed, the call to morning court. Reality crashed back over them like ice water. Serena stood reluctantly, straightening her dress. "I have to go. If I'm missed, I know." Damien rose beside her, capturing her hand one last time. "Serena, what you just told me about Varen, find proof," she said urgently. "There has to be a way. There has to be something that can break these contracts without destroying Azurath." She kissed him once more, quick and desperate. "Don't leave tomorrow. Please. Not yet." Then she was gone, disappearing into the dawn-lit corridors, leaving Damien alone in a garden where the flowers were slowly dimming back to their normal glow. In his quarters, the transfer orders still waited unsigned. But now, something else waited too, a dangerous possibility that perhaps duty and desire didn't have to be enemies after all. A dangerous gamble. 3 days passed in agonizing tension. Damien remained on Azurath, his transfer orders still unsigned, working furiously to investigate Serena's suspicions about Lord Varen. He'd barely slept, spending his nights accessing diplomatic channels and reviewing intercepted communications. Meanwhile, Serena played her role perfectly in public, the dutiful daughter preparing for her engagement announcement. But twice more, they'd met in the midnight gardens, sharing stolen moments that made the inevitable separation feel even more unbearable. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Damien was reviewing encrypted files in the archives when Tesh burst in, his elderly face flushed with urgency. "Ambassador Cross, the Sovereign summons you to the throne room. Immediately. Lord Varen has arrived early." Damien's blood ran cold. He grabbed the data crystal containing his findings and rushed through the corridors. As he approached the throne room, he could hear raised voices, something unprecedented in Azuratha's formal court. The guards admitted him to a scene of chaos. Lord Varen Starweaver stood before the throne, a tall man with sharp features and calculating eyes. Beside him stood a contingent of armed guards, far more than protocol allowed. Sovereign Mirel sat rigidly on her throne, with Serena standing to her right, her face carefully blank. "Ah, the human diplomat," Varen said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "How convenient. You can witness the happy announcement of my betrothal to Lady Serena." But something was wrong. Damien noticed the tension in Mirel's posture, the way her guards had positioned themselves defensively. This wasn't a celebration, it was a confrontation. "Lord Varen has presented us with revised terms for the alliance," Mirel said, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Terms that include significant concessions to his family's control over Azuratha's defensive systems." Varen smiled coldly. "Merely ensuring the security of my future wife's home, Your Eminence. I'm sure you understand the necessity of such precautions in these uncertain times." It was a coup disguised as a wedding contract. Damien saw it immediately. Once Varen married Serena and gained access to Azuratha's defenses, the crystalline dominion would effectively control the planet. Mirel would be a sovereign in name only. "These terms are unacceptable," Mirel declared. "Then the betrothal contract is void," Varen replied smoothly. "And with it, your access to our mining operations. I'm sure your people will understand when your economy collapses and your defensive shields fail." He turned his cold gaze to Serena. "Unless the Lady Serena chooses to honor her commitment willingly." Serena's face remained composed, but Damien saw her hands trembling at her sides. She was about to sacrifice herself to save her people, just as her mother had done decades ago. "Wait," Damien said, stepping forward. Every eye turned to him. "Your Eminence, if I may." Mirel's eyes widened slightly, and he saw a flicker of hope, or perhaps permission, in her gaze. "Speak, Ambassador." Damien pulled out the data crystal. 3 nights ago, our intelligence services intercepted communications between Lord Varen's personal fleet and known pirate factions in the Outer Rim. He activated a holographic display showing encrypted messages. Lord Varen has been orchestrating attacks on Azuratha's mining transports, the very attacks he claims his family's alliance would prevent. The throne room erupted in shocked murmurs. Varen's face contorted with rage. These are fabrications. A desperate attempt by a jealous fool who... The encryption keys match those used exclusively by the Crystalline Dominion's military command, Damien continued, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Lord Varen created the crisis he claimed to solve. He sabotaged Azuratha's economy to force this marriage and gain political control. Mirel rose from her throne, her presence suddenly commanding. Is this true, Lord Varen? Varen's hand moved toward his weapon, but Azuratha's guards were faster. Within seconds, he and his contingent were surrounded, disarmed, their conspiracy exposed. Remove them, Mirel ordered. Hold Lord Varen for trial. Send word to the Crystalline Dominion that their representative has violated interstellar law. As the guards dragged Varen away, he shot a venomous look at Damien. You've destroyed everything. The alliance is broken. Azurath will endure, Mirel said coldly. As it always has. The throne room cleared quickly, leaving only Mirel, Serena, and Damien. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Finally, Mirel descended from her throne and approached them both. Her eyes were wet with tears again, but this time, they weren't tears of sorrow. 20 years ago, I sent away the man I loved because I believed duty required sacrifice, she said softly. I've spent every day since wondering if I made the right choice. If there might have been another way. She looked at her daughter. I won't make you repeat my mistakes. Serena's breath caught. Mother. Mirel turned to Damien, and in her gaze, he saw both Marcus and himself reflected. Ambassador Cross, you've saved my throne and exposed a conspiracy that could have destroyed us. Azurath owes you a tremendous debt. She paused, a small smile forming. But more than that, you've given my daughter something I could never provide, the courage to choose love without abandoning duty. She reached out and took both their hands, joining them together. The betrothal is broken. The false alliance is ended. But Azurath still needs allies, still needs someone who understands both our culture and the greater diplomatic landscape. Mirel's voice strengthened, becoming formal. Damien Cross, I offer you not a transfer to the outer colonies, but a permanent position as Azuratha's chief diplomatic advisor, a role that would require you to remain at court indefinitely. Damien's heart thundered. He looked at Serena, whose amber eyes shone with tears of joy and disbelief. And Serena, Mirel continued, her voice softening, you are still the heir to Azurath. You will still need to marry someone who can stand beside you as a partner in leadership, someone who understands the weight of responsibility, someone worthy of your intelligence and strength. The implication hung in the air, transforming from impossible dream to breathtaking reality. Mother, Serena whispered, are you saying? I'm saying that I see the way you look at each other. I see genuine partnership, respect, and love, everything a true alliance should be built upon. Mirel's tears fell freely now. I'm saying that perhaps the prophecy about an Ashanti uniting stellar families doesn't require sacrificing your heart. Perhaps love itself is the bridge between worlds we've been searching for all along. She stepped back, releasing their hands but keeping them joined together. I'm saying choose wisely, choose together, but above all, choose honestly. Don't let fear or duty alone dictate your future. Damien turned to Serena, his hand trembling in hers. I know this is sudden. I know there's still so much to navigate. Politics, protocols, your people's expectations. But Serena Ashanti, if you'll have me, I want to stand beside you. Not as a replacement for duty, but as a partner in fulfilling it. Serena's smile was radiant despite her tears. You stood in my garden and told me you loved me knowing it was impossible. You risked everything to save my world. How could I possibly want anyone else beside me? They came together in an embrace that felt like both an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of 3 months of impossible longing, and the start of something neither had dared to dream possible. Mirel watched them, and for the first time in 20 years, the ghost of her own lost love felt less like a wound and more like a lesson learned. She'd failed to fight for Marcus, but she'd succeeded in ensuring her daughter Walden.